Hello, and welcome to At Your End Step. My name is Morgan, and I'm here with Mike.
Hello.
And sorry that we missed last week. I had some car issues, and so much so that I am fine. Don't worry about me, but I definitely have a new car now. So I'm going to take this moment and use my platform. Never buy a Fiat.
Whoa, that shot's fired.
Yeah, 100%. So yeah, don't do that. Don't make my mistake. And that's the end of our public service announcement.
I mean, when you see a commercial where it's like a human woman and then as a car, there's probably problems. Like that's weird
true.
Transformer stuff. So.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, no, the warning signs were there. I ignored them, and it's an unfortunate but true tale. But we of course are back with some interesting tidbits of news from around the Magic community that we would want to discuss here, and then of course we have some things that happened this week, and we're gonna miss we're not gonna talk about the team open that happened. So sorry if that's something you want to hear our discussion on, but we're gonna skip it because we do have both a standard tournament and a modern tournament that just happened that we can talk about, and we want to focus on that first and foremost. And then we actually have a question of the week this week. So let's go ahead and get started with the community segment. So we actually have a little bit of new information about the Mythic Invitational. These are, of course, different than the Mythic Championships. Invitationals have, $1 million payout, correct?
Yes.
And are kind of a big deal. This is the first time they are obviously happening. And we now know a way that you can qualify with them, and this is the only way at this point in time that we know of, other than being in the Magic Premier League, to qualify for them, and it's through Magic Arena. So what they are going to be doing is at the end of this current season. So right now we're in Magic Arena. We are in preseason 2. I don't know why you need 2 preseasons, but here we are, and so we have all the invited players on that they've shared, and it's a bunch of people, a bunch of notable names, a bunch of streamers, as well as the Magic Premier League, Pro League, and then the other 8 seats are going to be filled by the top-ranking constructed players on the Magic Arena constructed ladder. And obviously, once you hit Mythic, you are either placed in a percentage of how close you are to that top X amount, or you are in that top X amount. And the top 8 of that X number will be invited to the Invitational.
Assuming the top 8 that already qualified, because I think like Alexander Hayne was recently number 1.
Yeah,
who was already qualified. So
correct. I would assume that if that were the case, then the Invitational would still pass down to the top 8 non-qualified players.
Yeah, so you just gotta wait for the end of the season to get your certified email.
You gotta get that certified email. Make sure that the guy's got a stamp on it, says certified, gets delivered. They actually print it out, and someone delivers it to you.
It's like the plot for the Christmas Vacation where they're waiting. I was supposed to get a certified letter. Jelly of the Month Club.
Jelly of the Month Club. That's you thought you were going to the Mythic Invitational? Sorry, bonuses got to get cut this year.
Yeah, it's a lot of belt tightening, if you will.
A lot of belt. Just hope that your crazy cousin doesn't kidnap the head of organized play. I don't know who that is.
Who's the cousin Eddie of the Magic Pro League?
No idea.
I do want us to come back to this arena grinding. That's actually going to be our question of the week. What's really interesting, though, is the format of this event.
Correct. The format is best of 3.
Yay!
But not sideboard. It's best of 3.
Boo!
So here's the weird thing. It's best of 3, like whatever you want. You could literally.
It's called Duo Standard.
Correct. So it's best of 3, and you have 2 decks that you get to choose from. There are 2 60-card decks. Now, what is in those decks? Anything standard legal at this point. You could have 2 of the exact same deck, which I mean, you're just showing off at that point in time. Like, or you could have a modified version of like your first deck. So you have 1 deck, and then you have like a sideboarded version of your deck for a particular.
That would be really interesting.
Archetype. Or you can have 2 completely different decks, and it's weird. It's so weird, and it feels like it's very. It feels like it's very reductive is the word I'm looking for.
There was a whole article posted. It was by Aaron Forsyth and Chris Clay discussing like the why of this, and that article I don't think explained anything that I really felt was like this weird concept we have that like sideboarding's tough, and for new players that's the difficult thing to see. That is so weird to me.
I agree with you. I mean, speaking as someone who definitely like sideboarding is not the strongest suit in my gameplay, and I know that I struggle a lot with sideboarding, and I always have. And it's more like I know what to put in, and I don't know what to take out, and it's always been a challenge for me. But it's still part of the game.
It's a skill set,
and 100%. And I think, Best of One definitely has some strengths, but its biggest weakness is the lack of developing that skill. And I think that developing that skill allows you to see the game differently and allows you to understand the idea of like transformative sideboards or switching axes or like attacking at a different angle. And I think that's important to get to master the game. And I while this being, best of 3, quote unquote, is maybe a step better than best of 1, it's still not desirable. And to say like sideboarding is hard, so we're not going to do it, seems wrong.
Now, I will say this is a Mythic Invitational, not a Mythic Championships, and not a Pro Tour. So if you look at that list of who's invited, obviously the Magic Pro League, that group, but the other list is definitely players who have a good following online, but not some of your most prominent players, not some people you've seen at the professional levels very often. So maybe they definitely want to highlight a lot of different decks and a lot of different cards. So there's definitely this element they're hoping this leads to that. But I agree with you that I don't think it will. I think it does lead to reductive, like you just choose 2 of the best decks or the best deck that you know twice, and it just seems like they worked really, really hard to figure out an answer to a problem that didn't exist. That is the weirdest thing to me. Like,
I agree.
They're trying to solve a problem that wasn't there.
Yeah.
So, and I get it. Like they want to make these things easier for you to go from arena into what you're seeing on there, and other games don't have this element of sideboarding. But like, why? That's the thing that's really frustrating to me. Is like Magic is the best game. That's your draw. Magic is your draw. So like, don't keep doing that. I don't know. I'm interested to see how this tournament works, but Duo Standard does not have me excited at all.
I completely agree with that sentiment. It's not what I would have wanted to see. Like you have best of 3 now. You have ranked best of 3 now. You can rank up and qualify for this tournament by only playing best of 3. Would it take you a while longer than playing just best of 1? Potentially, probably. I'm not here to say that it's like faster or anything like that. I just feel like it's a better representation of a competitive game of Magic, truthfully. And the fact that they, for some reason, have this idea that the Magic should be played at its theoretically highest level. I mean, this is highest payout tournament.
That's true.
I'm not saying like it necessarily equates to skill. For certain demographics, it certainly does because you have your MPL players there, and they're theoretically the best of the best in the world, and you're gonna pair them against people, and you're gonna think that pair them against popular streamers or people who are contributors to the Magic community as a whole who definitely understand the game as it is, and you're gonna say like, well. There's some amount of players that don't know how to sideboard, and that it's too difficult or it's too weird of a concept to like get across. Or you're still playing the same amount of time, right? It's still best of 3, so it's not like you're saving time. Other than like you don't have to think about sideboarding, so you don't have to think for 3 minutes. Like I don't get it. I just think like they have bet so hard on best of 1 because they led with it, and now. They must have some data that shows that it's positive. They must have some data on their end that they're not exposing, saying like people are engaged with best of 1 more of a best of 3 or something.
But they do have that data, but it's already MTG Goldfish actually debunked most of it about 3 or 4 weeks ago in an article they wrote, because of course they have data that supports this because it's all you had the option to do.
Fact.
So like when you only give one way to play and then people overwhelmingly play that way, and then you turn around and say, see, people want this. You're just lying. Like, what's funny, I took their survey. They sent out a like how do you play survey, and like it was about what formats and what sets you like on all these things. And they never asked about like the best 1 versus traditional. So I thought that was fairly interesting. They had a chance to get some of that data and didn't. So,
Well, And other than this, we have no like actual play announcements.
Nope. Still don't know what organized play actually looks like going forward. So,
cool.
Neat. The last rounds of like RPTQs are about to happen, and then who knows?
It's just a mystery.
So play the game, see the world, or don't.
Play
the game, see your office.
To be fair, they haven't used like the see the world tag in such a long time. Even like going back to point has already been made. I forget by who, but like the fact that they changed like Pro Tours to not be city names anymore.
Right, that's true.
They're set names now because the focus on seeing the world is definitely not a primary focus at Wizards of the Coast anymore.
That's fair.
All right. So next up we have a year in review for Magic products. So they had an article on the Mothership that talked about the products that released in 2018, and we won't cover the whole thing. We just kind of wanted to touch on some highlights of some do's and don'ts that they're going to be continuing. So we have no dual decks in 2019.
Not even just like they are current. They said that they may release them sporadically when the theme rises. But Gavin Verhey wrote this article. I think maybe it wasn't the right choice to write this article, but because the guy still just loves Battle Bond so much. But he definitely said that like the reason they're getting rid of it is they ran out of ideas. But, like, as much as he wanted to see the old Sarkhan versus Sarkhan dual timelines going. So they said if a theme arises with a certain set, like something that's very flavorful, they might go back to it, but it is no longer a continuing product.
Gotcha. So. No master sets
which
year?
We kind of knew.
Yeah.
It's been alluded to a couple times that there's going to be they are still focusing on different ways to get reprints out. Actually, Chase Andres has suggested that this is going to be a modern-only set, which I think is just a buck wild prophecy, but we'll see. But no specific master sets. Even more interesting, they definitely. I decided to know this, and they may have already said this before, but it was really interesting in here. So, M25 and Iconic Masters were set up to be like that's how they were going to do master sets, and they were so poorly received that Ultimate Masters was supposed to be Graveyard Masters. It was like a theme to be a Graveyard like Matters master set. Mm-hmm. Got the full overhaul in the Ultimate Masters before they shut down shop. So like they like had to read the room and be like, okay, we're changing this. So he did say though that they felt that the release window was pretty successful for how quickly it went from this product exists to when we have the product, and we might see that more commonly for some sets that are coming up, as opposed to large hype windows just being like, oh, this is happening. So I think it's interesting. If the set is exciting enough, that probably works.
I think it's weird too because not weird, but like okay, so it is weird for Wizards of the Coast to catch on to this trend. But recently, you had Respawn Games, the video game developer. You might know them because the people who left Activision or left the what's the original Call of Duty studio. I can't remember. They were the original creators of Call of Duty, and they formed Respawn, made Titanfall. Well, they just released a free-to-play game called Apex Legends. It's a free-to-play battle royale game, but they just like people kind of knew something was coming, but they like announced it and released it the same day. And that's been a growing trend in like the video game industry of not having these super long windows where you know something is coming and you're just waiting and waiting. Like it's been more common to see something like announced at E3 and then released 6 months or to 9 months later. So I think that's interesting that they are catching onto that trend where people are kind of getting tired of these super long hype windows.
Well, so like in the video industry, I think that makes a lot of sense too, because then you don't get the bloated obliviating of writers who see this and that have expectations. I think the same is true for Magic players. You know, that we've had sets where, especially where there's been spoilers too, where people lose the hype. Mm-hmm. So I think that makes a lot of sense. Harder to criticize too if you're just like here's the set, here it is, like. It just is. So, because like we got it was an Iconic Masters that we got so much of to begin with and didn't see for a long time, and it just kind of sucked.
Yeah, well, you had that it was because of HasCon, because you had the preview of HasCon, and I think if like you had HasCon and then released the set a week later, it would have been a different story.
It would have been received a little bit better. Still not a great set. But.
Oh no. But we have some things that are going to be coming back. So we have the Challenger decks that are going to be coming back,
which we knew about. We did talk about, but that's cool.
Yep. So we are going to get another spell book.
Yeah, so it said there was definitely one coming out this year, and that these were not supposed to replace like From the Vault, but it's a similar idea. But it didn't say which one, but I thought it was interesting because I wasn't sure like how well they said it sold well enough that they are going to get another one. So it didn't make it sound like it was a slam dunk, but I really thought that was going to be the last we saw of the spellbook. So
yeah. And Commander. So we're going to have more Commander product. Equation.
And so going back to the reprint thing, he mentioned that like some people were upset about the price increase from $34.99 to $39.99, which he said is like it just kind of was one of those things that had to happen as we've done the sets. However, though, reprint because of that increased price, he said that they'll be essentially focusing on some reprint equity with that. Like again, no master sets, need more channels for reprint stuff. I thought it was kind of interesting.
Cool.
So. The other thing that was kind of sad, I know the Global Series apparently did not do well, and we're not seeing any more of that currently. So
yeah, that's I thought that was an interesting product to sort of try to break into a market that's been notably like poorly received,
right?
And I guess it didn't help them be received any better.
So. I think like they've mentioned this too. Like the Planeswalker decks were better this year because they only did the ones for the core set.
Yeah,
and like they're going to keep doing that, but they want to sort of tweak them so they might be closer to being FNM playable. But there is this constant focus where like when you release these things that are on the cusp of casual, they just make the decks real bad. So we talked about that when we talked about the Global Series. Like so the Planeswalkers were cool, some of the cards were okay, but overall those were really boring and the decks were bad. Yeah. So no pangolins can save that.
No, sorry. Pangolins cannot save you now.
Where are your pangolins now? I rolled up into a little ball, man. I don't
know. All right. So lastly, we wanted to talk about the State of the Beta update that we received here recently. And this is, of course, the Magic Arena Beta, which is the program is still in an open beta status. It is not a full release product, so things are subject to change. But I think we got some pretty positive changes. So first of them is being able to challenge your friends to a best-of-3 match. Finally. We did it.
So Brad Nelson had an article. It is on Star City Premium, so deal with it. But he sort of was criticizing that and like this, and now they've announced it. But essentially, like you want me to test for your tournament, but I can't challenge someone to play more than one game. So like they've done their. Hopefully, this will help allow it to be a better testing platform. Because as it stands, like Magic Online is still where you go to test. Yeah, it just is. So
and this. Probably won't help obviously with like testing for your draft portion.
No,
that's still something that's not ideal to test on Arena. But definitely, if you have a team or a couple people that you want to just challenge, it's much easier now to actually do constructed games and actually play full matches. So
and you can do. They had a couple options like you can set like who goes first and stuff. So if you want to test a matchup like on the player draw, like that's kind of nice. So
yeah, that's smart. That's smart. That's a good move. We also have Discord integration, and you're going to be able to like challenge people through Discord and stuff like that, which is pretty interesting.
Yeah,
I think that's cool that they're noticing that obviously people are using this for various means, whether it's you're on a streamer's Discord or what have you, and it's smart. Again, another smart move. And I'm not used to this. I'm not used to like saying that Wizards Digital is making smart moves.
Discord is something I use, and they're going to go onto that. I must be old.
I must be old. But yeah, like that's a good change. I think it's a good integration point. So yeah, again, another cool thing. And then we also have some deck builder improvements. So you actually can. I know the one thing that I did see is you can like select what format, whether it's like singleton, pauper, standard, which is pretty much the only things that you really have a option to select or participate in currently. But it's a good thing to have before they introduce another format to like the ecosystem, which is awesome. And this is probably the best change of all is the resolve all button.
No, we're still in deck building.
Okay, fine, deck builder.
You can now support multiple views and zooming options.
You
can actually like mess around with your deck list. Also, there's a crafting mode. If you are a person who, like me, who like when you didn't own a card at all, you have to go down to the options and click like at show cards you don't own. Now there'll be like a page for like you to go look at cards you don't see, which I think is pretty intuitive for people who would be very confused as to how do I craft something I don't own any copies of.
Yes. So yeah, the way that it is right now, having to force it to display copies of cards that you don't own. Not ideal, but
I think it's hard to find for some people.
Yeah.
But the zooming is something I said from the first time that when I first opened Arena, the first time they got like the free like sealed thing, I opened it, saw how the set was up, and I closed out Arena, and I didn't open it again for another month. So I've played a lot more of it now, but like I said then, how bad the deck builder was. So it's about time we got some options.
Good.
All right, go ahead.
Resolve all. I think like this is something that is, if you've ever played a deck that has a lot of triggers or anything like that, and not having a simple way to just basically like pass priority when you're trying to like resolve the triggers in an efficient manner, and then losing your timeouts because you can't do this effectively is bad. It's just bad. So having this button here, I think will alleviate a lot of issues with some of the more unforgiving aspects of the program as it stands.
I played a match yesterday that involved a Niv Mizzet, and just like all these things on the stack, and it's just like, and now I have to wait for him to click on this, and him. It's like, I don't care. I want to. I need to pass through this.
Yeah.
And even the pass through your turn thing, like I don't want to pass through the turn. I want to pass through this stack.
Yes.
So hopefully, the resolve all is nice with that.
And then lastly, they're going to add in Japanese and Korean localized support. So there you go. Now you can, pimp out your Magic cards. You can switch your localization to Japanese or Korean, and get your foreign cards.
I just think it surprised me. Those are some of the, because like they said they already have the English now, Spanish, French, German, Italian, Brazilian, Portuguese, Russian, Korean, and Japanese. So kind of surprised me. These are sort of the last, like the most recent two to make it in there. So
that's true. You think that'd be a higher priority.
Yeah.
But I wonder, especially like getting Russian in before that, because again, it's a different alphabet.
Right.
So even maybe they just had a harder time with.
It also just depends on where the localization teams were at.
True.
Some might have been working on it longer than others, etc. So I know China's on here. I don't know if Arena is playable in China or not.
I don't know either. I know they have stricter restrictions as far as what you can actually put
100%
in a video game. I know one of the most famous situations involves World of Warcraft and how they had to actually alter the things that they displayed. So one of the big things is skeletons, I think,
right.
for Japan, and a lot of Magic cards done got the skeletons on them.
That is true. Gutter bones.
A lot of spooky skeletons. So I don't know how that's gonna shake out, because it is a video game. It's probably under different restrictions than a card game would be. So I don't know. We'll leave it at that.
Yeah.
Not an expert on any of that stuff, so best not speculate. But that's going to be everything we have for our community segment. Before we move on to competitive, do want to give a quick shout out, of course, to our lovely sponsor, Comic Town. You can definitely check out some events they have coming up by going to Comic Town Gaming Center on Facebook.
Specifically, they are hosting SCG Regionals on Saturday, March 9th.
Definitely coming around the corner.
Bring your modern deck and make sure. I know they'll open up pre-reg for that. Normally it comes with a nice playmat and some things. So make sure you're looking out for that and getting registered for that early.
For sure, playmat and a token, be a real good time. Yeah. All right, competitive. So we actually are going to talk about Magic Fest Toronto first, because Mike, you had the itch.
The podcast went international this week,
and you decided to take a trek to Toronto with one of our good friends, Houston, and see what the lovely Canadians had to offer in regards to Magic the Gathering.
Yeah, I think I tweeted out that I was going to try and bring some heat to the Great White North, and then I had horrible internet connection all day and did really badly, so I didn't tweet again. So that is how much heat.
Consider the heat brought.
I took Mono Red Phoenix, a deck that I've had a lot of success with. We took a week off, but even that week in between there, I top hitted another IQ with it.
Yep.
There was a build from the Team Open I know we're not going to talk about that was fairly interesting and played 4 Light of the Stage and 4
Skewer the
Critics. I did not like that version very much. Played a little more traditional version, and just really, just wasn't really my tournament. Just like a lot of draws and game states that, a draw step could have pushed it one way or the other, and it really just wasn't on my side, which is kind of true of the red decks. The format may have been a little bit hostile. I know I had somebody, one of our listeners on Twitter had asked about a sideboard guide. I'm going to try and work on something for that, though I've been playing a couple different sideboards since KCI was banned, so I didn't have a good answer for him, because even the sideboard I played this weekend, I got punished really hard by at round 1 that I played. I had a bye, and then I played against Electro Dominance Living End in round 2. not a great matchup for me. Definitely like game 1, turn 2, I was on the play. My opponent only played Bloodstained Mire, so I hadn't seen anything, and I'm like, okay, cool, I'll do this, go to combat, bring back this Phoenix, and he was like, I'll discard Fair Macabre and exile your Phoenixes. And I just stood there, I was like, what? I was like, I don't, what? And I had chosen to play Surgical Extractions this weekend because of the way the format looked as opposed to Tormod's Script. Both of our sideboard games, I saw at least one, if not two, of those Surgical Extractions where Tormod's Script would have been game-ending. And like specifically, I won game 2 and game 3. He had a pretty quick draw because I got to say that his build was interesting. He was using Mausoleum Secrets, as a way to go and search for his bullets, including Fair Macabre, but also to go search for Living Ends, which I thought was pretty interesting. If you cycle enough creatures, he beat me game 1 with a Dragonlord Culligan, so like, yeah, that happened. But in game 3, when he went for the Living End, he had 2 Horror of the Broken Lands in his graveyard, and I went to extract them, and he discarded a Macabre to exile the one I targeted, and I was just like, man, if this was Tormod's Crypt, like this isn't a game. So
right.
and I've been playing with Tormod's Crypt the entire time, so I made that shift for this weekend and immediately got punished for it. So beyond that, I played against decks I generally seen. I beat Dredge, but I had a match against Burn where. Again, Burn is a pretty positive matchup. I played Dragon's Claw on the sideboard for the first time as well because I was prepared for it. And I kept a 1-lander game 1 and drew 11 lands. That was weird. And then mulled a 5 in game 3. And like that's how most of my rounds went after that. Like every win I had, I felt like I was fighting for, and I ended up losing out at the end of day 1 to Amulet Titan. So it's pretty frustrating. A pretty long drive to go take a deck that I was pretty solid with. But that's the nature of GPs in general. You know, I've done pretty well at IQs, which are smaller rooms that I've been able to read. If you looked at my sideboard from last weekend's IQ, I even played a Shatterstorm because I know what Columbus is, and Columbus is home of War Control, which we're going to talk about because did pretty well at this GP. But I didn't play that this weekend, you know, those sorts of things. So I'll work on a sideboard guide, but I'm not really fully set what the sideboard is at the moment, just because it was pretty set before KCI, but now it feels like it's in flux, and I literally had matches decided by those decisions this weekend. So
yeah,
but I'm glad I went. I will say this: I don't like the prices of Magic Fest, but the Canadian ones feel a lot better. So
yeah, I think with the conversion rate you said it was like $60-something.
Yeah, it was like $67 as opposed to like the 90 that it was supposed to be. So
I mean, and I got feels like you're winning on that exchange.
And I got my Lightning Bolt, which is gorgeous. I gotta tell you. And I got like a drawstring bag and a Channel Fireball hat for some reason. I don't know why. Cool. I got a Channel Fireball Canada playmat, which I gave to my wife because she's a friend from Canada. I'm like, here, this got Maple Leaves on it. And 6 packs of Guilds of Ravnica. Oh. And I opened a foil Blood Crypt in those. Oh, value. So, like, look at that.
Jeez.
So it was interesting. But I was glad I went. You know, I had this passport from the Pro Tour, like I hadn't used. I'm like, let's go do this, and I'm glad I went. But frustrated with the finish.
Yeah,
sure.
That's tough. It's tough to like have success and like feel pretty good about it. That could just like not be able to have that translate.
You know, I wouldn't have gotten to the car to drive 7 hours if I didn't feel like I had a chance to do well at that tournament. So to have that kind of day one is tough. But you know, those tournaments happen, and you know, I'm not discouraged. Just frustrated.
Yeah, you still got your memories.
I got all those memories. I did go to a very cool place called the Lockhart, which is a Harry Potter themed bar, and that was very cool. So
that sounds very, very cool. I've seen pictures. It was very, very cool.
It was nifty. So.
But they don't let me into Canada mainly because they don't have a passport or any other way.
I'm known throughout Canada as that guy.
that guy. Yeah. Known as nondescript white male. Yeah, that's me. But
nondescript white male. Yeah, you're on the number 1 list. Don't let into the country.
Yeah, pretty much. But I'll have to get a passport or something, and next time there's a thing in Toronto,
I think there's
go up with you.
Maybe April. I'll have to go and check. So
might be a consideration.
Yeah, there you go.
But let's talk about some people that did find success here in Toronto.
Ouch! That segue hurt.
Sorry.
Gosh,
it had to be done. Got to pull that Band-Aid off. So let's talk about the top 8. And are these the only deck lists that we have?
Yes.
That is disappointing.
Hey, I did see Corbin Hosler while I was there, and I talked to him for a few minutes, and I was like, hey, bud, I'm glad to see you here. And he goes, I'm really glad to be here. So they didn't do a ton of coverage, but it was good to see they brought him back because he was one of those guys who was in flux, and he's been, his name is stamped all over all the writings for GPs and Pro Tours. So he was walking around with his camera though, which is like, we don't need a cameraman. We have Corbin. It's like, yeah, just jack of all trades here.
Yeah, just our home movies cameraman.
Brendan Small over here.
Yep, exactly. So the entire tournament was won by Michael Rapp playing Grixis Death Shadow, defeating Jason Flanagan playing Tezzerator in the finals. The rest of the top 8 shakes out to Is It Drakes, Titan Shift, Black Green Midrange, Dredge, Is It Phoenix Again, and then Jund. Not I see like Lucas Siao here playing Jund in 8th place, but honestly, this feels like one of those classic modern top 8s where it's not necessarily a whole lot of like widely known names, which always feels like, again, modern is the people's format.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think starting with just a Death Shadow list, it's pretty straightforward. We've seen the adoption of, he's only playing one Faithless Looting back to some Mishra Baubles. Sideboard wise, I think the only card I saw here was super interesting was he's playing a Jace Vryn's Prodigy, which is pretty spicy, and a Shattering Blow, which is exile target artifact.
Interesting.
Yeah, I'm wondering why he went with... So I obviously he wants to get rid of Chalice of the Voids, so this is a 2-mana thing that does that.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure why you would play this over a Braid. Like, you want... I want to know what he wants exile for, and I'm sure the answer is fairly obvious, but I can't think of it. Maybe... Okay, I'll take it back. It's probably because of Welding Jar.
Oh.
So... Yeah. That makes, I think I answered my own question. I did it. I can work out the problem as I talk it out. Yeah, it's probably for Welding Jar. Because if you have to get rid of Chalice, and if you look at who he beat in the finals, that card probably was fairly important.
Yeah, so, I mean, let's talk about this list, because I feel like Columbus, Ohio is definitely, like, responsible for this. For this.
I'm sorry to everybody that I slacked off. I wasn't playing a lot of local tournaments. I feel like I'm, like...
part of the problem.
Part of the problem.
Yeah. So locally, what's the Michael Coyle, right?
Michael Coyle, yes. Yeah, he's had a lot of good finishes. I know that we have a lot of players locally who've done well on the Open Series who also like to play this. Like Bobby Colgrove comes to mind.
Yep.
I know we haven't said his name in a while, so there you go, Bobby. Ding.
Yeah.
But I was even like Ray Perez played that this weekend. He went 11-4 with this deck this weekend. I don't know if their lists were super similar or not, but.
I know that Michael is definitely like a part of a group, a consortium, if you will.
Yeah.
A consortium. Yeah, you're welcome. Of people that like to play
sanitarium, if you will.
The people that like to play these sort of artifact-heavy, prison-esque lists that rely heavily on War of Invention to be a toolbox deck and figure out very, very interesting ways to end the game. But yeah, I hate that on Magic, I hate on FTG Goldfish that this list is called Tezzerator when all the Tezzerates are definitely in the sideboard.
Yeah,
this is War. Like, this is a War deck.
Yeah, so if you don't know how this deck wins, and if you look at the main deck, you would be allowed to know why. It's
you
like,
might be puzzled.
It's Ibn Revulet. That's how it wins game one. That's it. Most people are used to what KCI presented and even what Lantern presented, and this is like the next form. Like, we haven't even seen Lantern's final form. So, whereas instead of trying to do like play a bunch of bad artifacts that derpy and mill out, most of the artifacts played here all have a pretty specific effect or get you to your next thing. Mm-hmm. And yeah, you can assemble a pretty hard lock pretty quickly if you don't have a lot of disruption. But the goal is to get to the point where you have an Ensnaring Bridge and a Witchbane Orb and a Bottle Cloister. So you essentially can't be interacted with at all, and you don't have a hand on your opponent's turn. And then eventually you should play Crucible Worlds and start milling them out. Game 2, then you bring in the Tezzerates because there's a lot of ways to turn your Graveyard Hate turns off the Rivulet plan. There are a lot of ways to interact that are pretty popular in the format, but the Tezzerates are sort of tough to do it. Specifically, the 2 Agents of Bolas, because most of the time when you cast these, it's just lethal.
You're gone.
So because you've only got to tick it up once and survive, and then that -4 is going to get there. So this deck is tough to play against. Obviously, Chalice is pretty well set in the format right now. I think it's fairly impressive, honestly, that the Death Shadow deck has a lot of discard effects, but that definitely Michael Rapp had to play a pretty diligent game to win here because there's a lot of things this deck can do. It has some draws that are pretty gross and explosive. It can easily cast things like Chalice on turn 1. And it can war for things pretty quickly. Like it is deceptive at how quickly it can start warring for its best artifacts, and that's tough. So
one thing that does strike me with this deck and it becoming more popular since the demise of KCI. It's definitely playing both of the cards that were noted in the last ban and restricted announcement as being on the watch list, which are Ancient Stirrings and Mox Opal. It's like they're daring WotC to do something, as if to say, like, "Oh, okay, KCI is gone. You picked wrong.
And you chose the wrong thing.
You chose poorly." And that's
Aaron Forsyth just starts like melting away.
Yeah, withering away. Correct, accurate. Like that's. That is pretty darning to remain PG. To see like both of those cards, those troublesome cards, kind of show up.
You could say damning in that context. That's not a curse. That's actual definition of the word.
Fine, damning. It's pretty damning to see that.
You said it twice. You see that curse? Ooh, I'm telling.
But yeah, I feel like you and I have been well aware of this list before the rest of the world, and now you can all share in our pain.
Yeah, not only did At Your End stuff go global, but so did this stupid deck. So I hope Coil and your whole group of your whole consortium, I hope you feel very proud of yourselves, and I hope they shut up shop real soon. Just nail it through the door. Noticed.
Let's shift down to third/fourth place with Izzet Drakes. We have 2 lists actually in the top 8, and this is the blue splash of Drakes that we've kind of been seeing. It is a Phoenix deck. And we really are seeing the blue splash just for a bunch of different kinds of spells as well as Thing in the Ice. This is the new It deck. This is I feel like every blue-red player since Splinterton was like, man, I wish blue-red was good again. And you might have had your wish. There you go. Now you don't need Splinter Twin back. They still are going to ask for Splinter Twin.
I want Splinter Twin back. You shut up.
I get it.
I like this deck too, but I want Splinter Twin back. I know. I would play Splinter Drakes.
Gosh,
why? Let me play Splinter Drakes.
Why would that even be?
I don't care. I wanna.
It could be good. Actually.
I want to play Splinter Twin on a Crackling Drake.
I mean, draw a card, get a big big 4 hasty flyer.
Yeah,
this could be.
Anyways, I will say Cale Thompson's list is pretty super. No, that joke not land. Superfood Kale. All right, but playing 2 copies of Terramander, which is a card that is sort of allowing that archetype to still exist in Standard.
Yeah.
That has adopted and moved away from Phoenix and moved to this, and it's not surprising to see Terramander here. It is. It's a fine turn 1 draw. These decks dabbled with Delver in their early iterations of it. And this is just more consistent than Delver. And then late, this is the kind of draw where you draw late in the game. It's easy to make a 5/5, and usually it's even cheaper than like the Crackling Drake. So I think it's sort of interesting that like if you know that your deck can start drawing to 2-mana 5/5s, right? Then that's pretty good. It's easier to protect and easier to play a lot of your other spells with it. So
sure.
I do think that I will not be surprised if we start seeing more lists go towards more Terramanders than Crackling Drakes in general.
Interesting.
So, the format, even though we have like Jund and stuff here, the format has generally moved away from things like Abrupt Decay. Lightning Bolt is still a thing for sure. So that is an argument for Crackling Drake. But the mana investment on Crackling Drake is just there are certain matchups where you just can't cast it. You don't want to tap. You want to tap 4 mana and do that. You want to keep mana up, spells up. So Terramander, I think is going to be interesting. Going to be consistently powerful.
Yeah, I think when you start looking at certain things in people's sideboards that they're trying to play towards and hit, that 4 toughness is definitely like a sweet spot for like removal spells. So you can play your Terramander, and if you play it right, they just don't have an opportunity to really answer it.
Yeah,
I mean, Dismember is still like something that sticks out that is universal, but still like that's what Dismember should be.
Sure.
You should have to like play that card and pay the price to really like do that. But things like even the sideboard of this, where you look at like a Rending Volley.
Yeah, that's the card really speaks to your point. Rending Volley being uncounterable is one of the reasons you're playing it. And so many decks are playing it for Thing in the Ice. But yeah, you're right. Like the fact that the Terramander just says, "Oh, 4 is neat."
Yeah, and like if you play Terramander activated, they run Evolve. You're like you're playing smart. You're gonna have more mana open, or you're gonna wait for your moment, your opportunity.
It again. That's the other crazy thing. You just activate it again. Like oh, okay.
But I think like that now that you say it, we talk through it. That does seem like a move that people could make in the future. Next up,
I will say Peter Rawlings' version instead. So that slot for those 2 Terramanders, he's still playing the 2 Pyromancer Ascension, which is another sort of alternative way around some of the creatures. So.
Gotcha. That makes sense. We have Titan Shift showing up here in 4th place, and this is not too wild, I don't think. Of a list really. I think it's always interesting to. See these decks they don't show up consistently all the time, and it's always nice to see like a non Amulet Titan, Primeval Titan deck be successful. But nothing too groundbreaking here. You do have a Carnage Tyrant there in the sideboard, which I mean, yeah,
and a Shatterstorm,
and a Shatterstorm, which definitely probably.
Could have helped. I don't know if that obviously.
I don't know if the pairings actually worked out. If you ever got paired against the Tezzerated deck,
even if it did, that Tezzerated would be better than him. But
right, exactly.
I will say the Flame Slashes in the main are pretty interesting. Obviously gearing towards those things in the ice in the format and things like that. So
because you're playing Anger of the Gods to try to clear out some of the small things, but sometimes you again need to kill something that has 4 toughness. Whether it be a Crackling Drake.
Kill all the small things.
Yeah, sometimes you can't. No. And then we have just pretty much 2 other archetypes. So we have a Jund list and a black-green mid-range list. These are going to overlap with a lot of different cards. And again, these are your mid-range lists. These are your 50-50 pretty much every matchup for the most part. I don't know. I just don't really have any more things to say about the green black X decks.
No, that and Jund, like that's just what they are.
It is what they is.
There's a Damnation and a Languish in the sideboard.
Tell
me about Languish. Why are we playing Languish here?
We're playing Languish because -X matters of some persuasion.
For what? Give me a creature so I know. What creature do I want that for? Hazoret?
Yeah, maybe.
Right. I'll give him Hazoret. There you go.
Sure. Maybe I just don't want to buy Damnations for the weekend, and I have these Languishes.
I have these Languishes. They're a lot cheaper.
It's true. They're a lot cheaper, and they do most of the same work.
I could argue that
your welding jar. There you go.
Well, your Goyf. Well, that's true. Oh, well, Damnation's Wrath of God. It can't be regenerated.
Oh, there you go.
But Languish does maybe let your Goyfs live through the Wrath. So against something smaller like a Spant Spirits or humans, maybe that's the decider.
Yeah. Speaking of decks that are just like nowhere.
Yeah, weird.
I don't think it's weird. I think people like you don't have KCI and people just start moving and shifting things, and then you can hate out the Aether Bio creature decks, and they're just gone.
These decks are pretty hateful too. Both Jund and the Black Green deck have main deck like Kalidas.
Yeah,
like that's rough. I don't want to see main deck Kalidas ever.
No, not at all. And then lastly, another deck that doesn't want to see a main deck Kalidas, Dredge.
Yeah, weird.
Piloted by Joseph DeJoy, and it's Dredge.
Yeah, this is pretty straightforward.
So obviously, with KCI leaving, I don't think that we got like a big, huge shakeup or shift. I don't think that cards we got from Ravnica Allegiance have really shaken up anything. And it kind of just is what it is as far as like premier modern tournaments. I mean, Grixis Death Shadow was once something that just was not around, and now has definitely risen back to its former glory. It feels like that's like probably the best takeaway that I could see. Also, the artifact decks still exist and are annoying. Whether it be like something like this, War Control list, or like Lantern Control or something like that. Like, turns out Ancient Stirrings, Mox Opal, still good.
I think it's pretty interesting how poorly the red burn decks did. Obviously, there's no Mono Red Phoenix here and no burn decks in the top 8. Now, granted, we're not seeing a ton of decks. Yeah. And there was a lot of red there as I walked around the room. But all the sideboards of these decks, like you have a lot of Dragon's Claws, main deck Kalidases, Scavenging Oozes. Like there's a lot of hate for it right now. People are ready for it. So
I agree with that. It's not like the secret is not a secret anymore. Right. Like people know that burn is good again,
and they may have overprepared for some of the builds that had like led the stage and screw the critics. Like some of those decks look pretty scary. So
all right. With that being done, let's move on to Star City Games Dallas. It was won by Mono Blue Aggro, piloted by Robert Wagner, defeating Esper Control, piloted by Jonathan Hobbs in the finals.
Another second place finish for Jonathan Hobbs.
Yes. So. That's rough, but I think with Mono Blue now is definitely cemented as a legitimate aggressive deck and like a legitimate deck. Period.
You say legitimate aggressive deck. So how many copies here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 copies in the top 25 that were given as far as deck lists. So 6 copies of Mono Blue Aggro. How many copies of Mono Red Aggro? I'll save you the time. 0. I think that's fairly interesting.
I don't find that surprising. I think that best of 3. I think people's judgment of Mono Red was always clouded by best of 1.
Certainly it was, but like even the last 2 weeks we've seen like the deck still be successful. The deck's raw power isn't a lie, but it's interesting to see the format sort of react to it and how the burn spells are so good, but the mid range creatures are that much better.
When your mid range deck that you're playing is. Soul type mid range is what some might consider either the best mid range deck or the best deck period in the format. Is playing for Wild Growth Walker for
Hydrate Crassus.
You're
Vraska's Contempt.
You're playing so many tangential like life gain spells that you just can outrace the burn, and your creatures get bigger, and your sideboard's just better against the aggressive. Red deck,
right?
Because your life total. If there's one thing that is true in this format, there's so much incidental life gain between all the different cards that are currently in standard. It's really hard to be like, I'm going to play Mono Red and win.
Yeah, you. It's not like other formats where once you put a person at, you're like, okay, you're at 6. I know what I can draw to. A lot of decks won't stay at that life total. Esper Control has Absorb. We have like Azorius aggro here. Those decks are running Legion's Landing, a lot of just incidental life gain creatures.
Yeah, just
like
my creatures gain life,
so
and are bigger than yours a lot of the time.
It's true. So it's interesting. I played Mono Blue during the whole first constructed preseason on Arena to get to Diamond. Now I was playing an older version of it. And the deck, the deck does what you want it to do. It's a very good tempo deck. It's definitely the best dive down / spell pierce deck that I've seen in a long time. Terramander has really taken the deck up to a new level as having a second finisher. If you ever played the deck at all, you knew that your best draws are either the ones where you had a turn 1 thing and then a turn 2 Curious Obsession with Protection. Like those draws are almost unbeatable. But the other draws where you have just like 1 or 2 Tempest Djinns that live, like that card is just a beating. Well, now you have more Tempest Djinns, but that also are turn 1 things that carry your Curious Obsessions. Yeah. And I think that's what is so interesting about these new builds of this deck.
Yeah, Terramander was a huge gain, and maybe you can't always effectively adapt it for on the cheap like a blue red Drake.
Sure.
Standard.
You're not just like churning through spells,
but. Right? But just it carries a Curious Obsession with the best of them, and eventually it'll be a 5/5, 6/6, whatever,
right.
Depending on if you have any, depending on if it's Curious or not. I think there's so many people that have written this deck off because it's cheap. Bar none, you could buy this whole deck that just took down and open for under $75.
Yeah,
comparatively to like the $400 price tag some of the other lists in this top 8 have
for the price of 1 Teferi.
Yeah, and it's definitely something that I don't think people can not take seriously anymore.
No, I totally agree. It's definitely a legitimate deck, and we've seen like in the hands of a good pilot who knows the deck, it is tough to navigate those early turns because you've got to just pick lines and go with it. Like, you just have to. And people playing against this deck are wishy-washy. They're afraid of trying to set up the perfect sequence and do these things. You just got to play your game plan against it, because if you try to make better decisions than the better player playing mono blue, you're going to lose. You're going to guess wrong. You're going to be led down the wrong line. So, I think that's important for this deck, and it's very good. I mean, as I said, so it's 6-7 copies in the top 24 or top 25, like including in the top 8 also Tan and Grace.
Yeah.
So
Tan and Grace, you're getting so close to getting that trophy, bud.
The Tan and Grace. Sorry.
The yes, correct. Yeah, so close, bud. One day that watch will end, and you'll hoist that trophy above your head. But this weekend was not your weekend, unfortunately. I have been tracking sort of the evolution of what the Esper Control lists kind of look like, and this feels like it has supplanted Jeskai Control as the control deck du jour, which I think a lot of people called, especially once you get the rest of your mana base and you look at where our threats have sort of shook out, and obviously the powerful card that is making Esper so appealing is still Kaya's Wrath. That Wrath spell is something that is super powerful, and maybe it's not as consistent as a Wrath of God would be, a Damnation would be, but it's good. It's still good.
And I think you got to give credit to Jonathan Hobbs here too for making some pretty good metagame calls. He's got 2 copies of Cry the Carnarium in the main.
Yeah.
And while he may have lost to mono blue in the finals, you have to assume that served him pretty well against all these mono blue decks, because it's a card that, while Dive Down and Expel Piercer still ways to interact with it, it can clear most of the board of those mono blue decks.
Yeah.
So,
and that's the other prominent aggressive deck we have is mono white / blue white aggro, which folds so hard to a Cry.
100%.
And I think we see he's only playing 3 Kaya's Wrath main. He has still the 4th on the sideboard, but I think the compromise between 2 Cry and it feels like a throwback to. Decks used to do this, like Jeskai back in the day when they had Anger of the Gods and then another Wrath, where they would have these tiers of Wrath to not fall too far behind in the aggro decks, and then you could still find ways to toss it if you're playing against a deck. You still have your Chemisters inside that you can use to toss it away.
Yeah, we saw that with Sweltering Suns and Hour of Devastation.
Yes,
where you could cycle Sweltering Suns. I do want to say that his sideboard, maybe if you want to look at maybe why he wasn't able to pull out the win here, his sideboard seems definitely geared towards. We just talked about those mono red decks. I do like his mana base a little bit better than we saw even with Shout out to Nick Cowden, who did well, but the no basic island here, just the plains and the swamp, and a lot of white black cards in the sideboard. For Basilica Bellhaunt, definitely the card I want against decks that are playing Goblin Chain Whirler and History Benalia. But not what I want against little blue guys. My turn 4, I don't block you. The card in your hand is probably irrelevant, and my life's also fairly irrelevant. So, cool. Because you're not the kind of aggro deck where I'm super worried about my life total. I need you to stop drawing cards.
Right.
Please.
Yes. I agree. That is definitely Bellhaunt is slowly getting, I think, pushed out of the format. It's tough though, because it's still good against mono white and Azorius aggro.
It is worth those decks where you want. I mean, we see Rakdos aggro we're going to talk about here. It's fine there, but against mono blue, it is.
I agree.
That was 4 cards that you probably is supposed okay, I'm playing against a fairly aggressive matchup. I should want these. I don't want them at all.
Yeah.
So,
I think in general, if I was Esper Control, I don't really want to play against an aggressive deck in the first place.
Right.
I especially don't want to play against mono blue. I think that's kind of where I'm at.
That's fair. 3rd place was Azorius aggro. I want to at least mention that this build went back to the LSV deck.
Yeah, we saw the Lean in Vanguard, Johnny's Pride Mate,
Healer Hawk.
Healer's Hawk, yeah.
Yeah.
And I have to say, watching some of his games, man, if he did not deal with the Pride Mate, it just as you would expect, it just gets out of control. And I think he was playing against, I don't know if it was Tan and Grace before the elimination rounds or another mono blue player or just something else, but getting out of range, it gets past the range where a removal spell of some other deck would be able to handle it, and it's just just nothing you can do about it.
Yeah, it's one of those decks that actually has a game plan. Like going back to Mono Blue, where like it can just present big threats and gain enough life, where like it actually doesn't matter how many cards Mono Blue draws.
Yeah,
which is pretty interesting. So the exact opposite of what the Bellhaunt is
right.
doing in Esper. Unfortunately, we do have a Nexus deck.
Yeah, there's a few Nexus decks here in the top 25 of varying degrees.
I feel so weird about this because all these decks that have 4 Frilled Mystic, I'm like, yes, I want this, but I don't want Nexus decks.
Yeah, it's all Nexus of Fate.
I love the idea of Wilderness Reclamation and like Frilled Mystic. Like those two, like, you got peanut butter in my chocolate. Like I want that.
But you would hope that it would be like an evolution of like the Bant Flash deck that we saw earlier in the format instead of being a Nexus of Fate deck. And we've been rallying against Nexus of Fate for a very long time, pretty much since the card was revealed. And now it feels like there's been a larger and larger growing distaste for Nexus of Fate in the Magic community. And I appreciate it.
Yeah, y'all laughed at us. Y'all laughed at us.
Keep yelling. There's plenty of people that didn't. They were along the train in the beginning.
That's fair.
And it just seems getting getting bigger and bigger.
Shout out to Eric Hawkins also playing Azorius Aggro.
Yep. We already talked about Tan and Grace.
That's true. I will say he wasn't playing the Healer's Hawks, which I like those Healer's Hawks. But let's talk about this Rakdos midrange deck.
Yeah. So this is piloted by Jody Keith, who's a notable face on the Star City Games Open Circuit, and he was playing a Rakdos list, but this is mainly a base red deck that is kind of just playing a bunch of like effective mid-range threats with a pretty good sideboard for like your some anti-control cards, and I really this is something that I know Mike and I early on in the format before we had Ravnica Allegiance kind of were toying around with, trying to figure out what we could do with a treasure map sort of deck in like the black-red colors. Trying to find success with it, really didn't come together. Your mana base was still pretty rough, but this list looks pretty interesting. And we had a lot of the same cards, to be perfectly honest. We know Rekindling Phoenix was a good card, and Siege Gang Commander was awesome as well. I was kind of just trying to put everything else together.
Yeah, I like Karn in these decks as well. Like you're just looking for those card advantage things, just like treasure map. I enjoy his status statue in the sideboard.
Yeah.
Unless you treasure map, no way to cast statue, so you're boarding this in for Death Touch for your Chain Whirler.
Yeah.
That's a plan, I guess.
For sure. It's definitely a thing you can do. And it kind of just acts like your Wrath spell, I guess. Yeah. It's probably there's only one of. I don't think he was necessarily like
No, it just seems like a bit of a wasted slot. Maybe I'm wrong, but
potentially
I do like targeting your Sieging Commander with it and then using goblins to throw things. It's like Death Touch, Death Touch.
But there's a lot of we do see things like Drillbit and Theater of Horrors actually showing up as being some interesting. What's the mechanic called? Spectacle cards.
Yep. Also, 4 copies of Rick's Body Reveler in the main.
Yeah. So I think that's a card that we were pretty high on that has yet to really find its footing, but here it feels like a very good slot. Mm-hmm. I still really like Dire Fleet Daredevil. I still think that card is a pretty nifty card to have. It still is like such a mopey 2-drop. It feels like, and I wish it could keep the card, but then it becomes absurdly powerful.
Yeah, 100%.
Or at least like kept it to your next turn, and I don't know. That still feels really really good. But I do like where it's placed in this deck, even though like 2-drops just seem pretty poor.
Wily Goblin, man.
Maybe.
Probably not, but that was the original idea for behind that deck, was trying to ramp up. So,
and I really like the use of Carnival and Carnage. I think like he did some interesting things in his particular build against some certain archetypes, like people tucking something with a Teferi and then him being able to kill it.
Right.
Like I think like that is pretty meaningful, and Blighting is still Blighting.
Yeah, it's still a thing.
Still good. Still fine. But this is a different take on the decks that we've seen in the format, So if you wanted to try something a little bit different, a little bit spicy, and you're a mid-range player, and that's where you like to be in the format, gives a shot. You don't have to play Sultai all the time. But speaking of Sultai, we do have Dylan Donegan here showing up in 8th place with a further iteration of Sultai mid-range. And truthfully, I don't see anything truly revolutionary. We do see a few one-ofs like Hash's Taker in the main, Incubation Druid, and then Vraska, Golgari Queen. I don't know if that's huge and revolutionary.
I mean, it makes sense for people talking about Golgari Queen is coming back just because it deals with opposing Hydroid Crassus real well. So,
again, it's another card that has tangential life gain. It's not a lot, but hey, it
exists. So,
anything else here? I know that we probably should talk about the Nexus of Gates deck.
Shout out to Tom Ross, 10th place, playing mono white aggro. He made a very bold declaration that the Unbreakable formation was really, really good, and he decided to play a couple of them and not play any blue sources, so that was interesting. We should mention at least Nexus of Gates. I've been playing the Gates deck, the non-Nexus version on Magic Arena, and it's gross. So Gatebreaker Ram, I gotta tell you, 3 mana 10/10s are real weird. They're real weird. So these builds are a little bit trickier, and I think I don't know how I feel about these. 4 Expansion Explosion is just so much. A lot of Niv Mizzets here as well, but these decks, if you can't stop them, if you can't slow them down, their end game is just unbeatable. It is it's like playing against Tron. I think that's been the comparison. Any of these decks that play like this is just playing against Tron. If you can't stem the tide early, their end game is disgusting, and it's better than any deck in the format. Any of the control decks, anything. It just does.
Yeah.
So any of these Gates decks.
Yeah, for sure. I definitely I've played a little bit of these type of decks. It's not exactly this build, but similar builds. And once you get going, there's just no stopping. And the deck just builds on top of itself into horrendous ways for your opponent. And people probably don't like playing against these type of archetypes and not to mention, I know we talked a lot about tangential life gain decks, but Archway Angel, that's
not tangential. That is the plan.
That is gaining 10 life for 6 mana.
Yeah, that card.
And also having a 3/4.
They also chain into each other. It's real gross.
Oh yeah.
So,
but
one more deck I think we should mention.
Is it the Teamer Drakes?
It is Teamer Drakes, Jonathan Job. So we see our normal creatures here: 4 Terramander, 4 Crackling Drake, 2 Niv Mizzet, 3 Hydroid Crassus.
Yeah.
So I think it's interesting. A lot of the Drake decks have sat in the middle of are they aggressive? What are they? And Crassus tells you, Crassus and Niv Mizzet firmly tell you that we'll win when we need to.
Yeah,
we'll get there, which I think is interesting, and sort of the full evolution of these decks. I think also the sideboard in green, you also get access to Crushing Canopy.
Crushing Canopy was an overperformer.
Yeah,
and I watched him just cast some backbreaking Crushing Canopies against the mirror match or killing another Hydroid Crassus or something, and just being that looks pretty good.
Yeah, those modal sideboard cards are pretty good. I've seen some builds like this earlier in the format that were trying out Growth Spiral as a spell to play for this deck, and that makes a lot of sense to me, and I wouldn't be surprised to see if that's maybe the next iteration of this deck, maybe over something like Discovery Dispersal, even, just because you want your Crassuses to be castable earlier, but also just playing a Niv Mizzet 1 turn earlier with protection is pretty gross. So maybe that's the direction this goes with it, but I thought it's a fairly innovative way to take the Drake's deck.
Yeah, I just wonder if you can. What's the balance then at that point in time of how many green sources you have to play?
No, for sure. That's the problem, and you're probably playing a lot more Shocklands than this is as far as green sources.
Yeah.
But if you can make it work, I feel like that's pretty powerful. So.
But overall, I really do think there's a lot of diversity within Standard as it exists currently. A lot more than we're previously used to since we entered in this new Ravnica block, and it still continues to be the case. I think there are definitely some annoying decks that people don't like to play against, and some annoying cards that cause some pain points. But overall, you have the three biggest archetypes filled. You have aggro with a couple of decks. You have mid range with a couple of decks. You have control realistically with one deck, but it doesn't mean you can't play something like a Jeskai control. It may not be as effective, but I mean, even when you look at something like Is It Drake's, you can shift that into a control deck post sideboard even. So it's a little bit different, but we can stretch it. We can, because Is It Drake's is like somewhere in the middle, right?
Right.
Would you call it a mid range deck? I don't know. Would you call it a tempo deck? I don't know. Would you call it it's just a weird sort of deck that exists somewhere between I would say all of the archetypes, depending on what your 60 looks like between games or what have you. But you see it be aggressive, but you see it be on the polar opposite of it being control sometimes.
Right.
So it's weird. And then you even have something like these Gates decks, which are ramp decks. And so you even have that. I don't think you have a true combo deck at this point in time, so that might be the only archetype that is sort of left out.
Nexus is a combo deck.
Yeah, it's a one card combo deck.
It is, but it's still. I feel like it is.
I just I'm hesitant to call something like Simic Nexus combo deck.
Okay, that's fair, I guess.
It doesn't feel like a combo deck.
I mean, it wins on turn 4 sometimes, so
yeah.
I mean, turns 4 through 10 through 15 through 20
through however long it takes for your opponent to concede. But the thing that I find hesitant is it's not I feel like once a combo deck goes off, you always know it's going to go off. But I don't know if the Civic at a certain point in time they do, but not as. Maybe you're right.
I get what you're saying.
It's tough. It's tough to be
It feels
clinical.
more like a combo deck than anything else. So maybe it's a control deck. I don't know.
Yeah, it's weird. I would probably classify more as control decks. Killers just beat you in a control game. They just counter whatever they want and they just get ahead. But sometimes they're ramp decks.
Yeah.
That's the weird thing. So meh. I guess I would probably say anything that is playing Wilderness Reclamation is not wanting to do fair things.
No, I would.
So
agree
maybe
with that.
that's where we draw the line.
Yeah, that's it.
Okay, perfect. I like that. So there you go. I mean, really, you could play for the most part whatever you want, as long as you are going archetypally. You may not be able to play an aggressive red deck. That sucks. But there's still aggressive decks that you can play. Maybe Jeskai's not the best, but there's still a control deck out there for you. And what more could you want? Nothing is too oppressive to really be taking over a top slot. And then again, you'll still have Green Black X or Sultai maintaining that probably the top percentage, because it's just it's like a Jund deck.
Right.
You have game against everything. So the players that feel like they could edge out other players through skill are going to want to play that kind of deck. But that's all I really have to say about Standard at the moment. So good to move on to the question of the week here.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. So with us knowing how you can qualify for the Mythic Invitational as it currently stands, so you as a common player can go into Magic Arena
as a peasant
and grind your way to that coveted top 8 Mythic slot. How do we feel about that? How do we feel about that sort of being one of the end goals of grinding, and really grinding as a whole within Arena?
I think it's really, really bad.
Yeah,
I think it's hard to spin it anything other than that.
I don't think you will honestly find a lot of arguments saying that this is a good way to qualify. I literally was on the podcast last time we talked about this and was yeah, laddering would be a terrible way to qualify you for this $1 million tournament.
Watsy was like, oh, hold on.
Well, go ahead and do it.
Hold my drink.
Because all that laddering does is reward time investment.
All laddering does is get you to the top of tall buildings.
Correct.
Sometimes you get to say princesses that way.
Sometimes, but most of the time they're probably in another castle.
Yeah, and sometimes you get hit by oil barrels.
Sometimes, or a fire, but sometimes you get that hammer though.
So what's the hammer in Arena?
I have no idea.
Oh, okay. We lost the line here.
No, we just started talking about Donkey Kong.
No, but you're absolutely right. Arena, I think from just a player perspective. So they did this once before.
Oh, the hammer is cocaine. That's
gosh.
We figured it out.
I think if you listen to Dr. Horrible sing-along.
The hammer might be something else completely.
But like they did this once before with Planeswalker points, where like the top X Planeswalker points finishers on the season got Pro Tour invites.
Yeah,
and it caused people to like to fly out to events, like to fly out to Worlds and grind side events, and just like essentially pour money and time into the system and get a ticket printed out. And this, maybe not so much money, I guess, but definitely time. Like an unhealthy amount of time, right? Like, you know, the idea is that anybody could do it. That's just not true. Like, we shouldn't be podcasting right now. We should be playing Arena.
Yeah, grinding Arena. That's all you should be doing in your free time. And theoretically, that's all you should be doing, period. If you maybe that's an overestimation. Maybe we're kind of blowing this out of proportion, but it doesn't. It doesn't. People like $1 million is a lot of money, and people want to qualify for it. All right, so if that's like your end goal, if you want to be a part of this, like. Yeah, that's what you should be doing until the season's over.
Yeah, and
period.
Like, here's the thing: like you say, like maybe we're overestimating. I don't think so, because like once you get in that top 8 slot, you don't just get it.
No, you have to maintain it.
Yeah, like people are also pushing for it, so you get pushed down. So you go to bed and be like, I did it, number 2, and then like it's like, hey, you're 100 again. It's like, no, how did that happen? You know what I mean? and like maybe it isn't that drastic how much it moves. I've not been into Mythic yet, but here's the thing: I don't want to be. You know what I mean? Like I don't play Magic. Like Arena enough to do that. Like I like the fact that I can log in and like do my daily stuff, but you know that's awful. Like Moto, even like I had a hard time devoting like days to tournaments, but at least I know that like on Magic Online, if I did devote a day to a tournament, that was it.
Yeah,
and that maybe qualified for something, or that was it. Like eschewing the entire like way that that Magic has done that, and I get it. Like the argument of like the way you've always done it isn't always the best, but like knowing that you had this. Roughly this amount of time to do something, and what the end result is I think a pretty important contract between the player and the provider. And grinding on Arena, like laddering like this, like it's gross. And I think ultimately it's harmful. There's a group of players that this is harmful to, that feeds into horrific habits. And that's something that like they as a company have to be aware of.
Yeah, like. There's a reason why, as far as I know, and if I'm wrong about this, like, please, listeners, please correct me. Reach out to the many methods we have of communicating with us, but I don't think in any other game the ladder means anything other than a bonus at the end of the season. I don't think anything qualifies you for anything. As far as I know, Hearthstone, that's not the way it works. They have regular qualifying tournaments to their larger tournaments or what have you. Same thing for Eternal. Like, it's just, you rank up in the ladder, and then at the end of the season, you get rewards. And that's what it should be. It should be just a reward for your players that want to devote time into laddering, and then at the end you get your 5 packs and 1,000 gold if you hit Mythic or whatever. And it's just to reward your free-to-play players. That's really what it is, so they can get more free product. And they have something to chase that is probably going to be a struggle for your average free-to-play player, right? They don't have access to all the cards. They have to make it work, and it should feel rewarding, right? And that's going to feel great for them. What's not going to feel great is if you are a player that Mike is talking about that might have developed unhealthy habits and an unhealthy addiction. Let's put it out there. Addiction to the game, chasing this $1 million tournament, and then you just lose. You don't get it, and what have you done? What potential ramifications could you have done into your life in a month where you dedicated all your time to this and nothing else, and still didn't hit it? Like, that's a problem, and you're not. Mike's exactly right. The sheer fact that you look at a GP, a PTQ, a PPTQ. These are designated times and places that you go to. You have a result at the end of it, and you move on. But when the tournament is a month long, and it's always happening, regardless, like that sounds insane, that's what it is.
This reminds me of the plot of the first Mortal Kombat movie. You just hang out on this island, and somebody can walk up and challenge you whenever they want to, and you're like, but I'm so tired of fighting, and it's like, test your might.
I don't care. I'm Raiden. I abducted you. Fight in this tournament.
Yeah, like, hey, Sonya, go choke out Kano on the beach. Like, let's get this done. But, like, I think, like, now, granted, maybe this is a stopgap because they haven't, it's probably pretty hard to design the infrastructure for tournaments. You know what I mean? Like that. Yeah. We're in open beta. I would assume that some sort of tournament structure is coming. They're experimenting with what their events look like, but at some point, I'm sure a tournament structure is coming. I would hope, but there's no way they can rely on this being the consistent thing, because this leads to just straight burnout, right? Like, this is just player-based burnout, like, no matter what. So maybe it's okay for this first one because it's exciting and it's this new thing, and they don't have a better answer for it right now. And knowing WotC, that's probably the truth. But they've got to be real careful here. Like, they are inviting some bad things to happen. And, you know, is that on them for that? You know what I mean? Like, you know, should we sue Willy Wonka because a bunch of kids got real fat looking for golden tickets? Like, I don't know, but like, at the end of the day, that golden ticket promotion was like probably led to like a much higher rate of like childhood obesity and like diabetes. Let's just be honest. You know what I mean? Like,
true.
That's on Wonka. Okay.
I mean, I don't know how the man sleeps. Really,
he can't. All the sugar is literally impossible.
Destroys him. No amount of Oompa Loompas could rock him to sleep. He was
like 43, and he's like, I need an heir because I know I'm going to die soon
because of all this chocolate I've been consuming.
Please, I need a child heir, and you're only going to live another 15 years, so you are going to need an even younger child heir after this.
The system only perpetuates itself.
An everlasting gobstopper, if you will. But I think like WotC's got to be careful with that, because it's hard to like suggest that like, hey, we're listening and we care as a company, but please kill yourself like trying to do this, like harm yourself, stay awake for weird hours, stress and do like that's tough. And I think that I hope they come up with a better answer for forthcoming seasons.
I think they have to. I don't think that this can be the end all be all of invitational qualifications, because you can't expect people to do this.
How many people are probably in the ladder as we speak, like playing on Arena? Can we like, what's the guesstimation on the player base in the ladder?
I have no idea.
I wonder like what that like. What am I? One of hundreds of thousands of millions, right?
Yeah. Welcome to like. I think there was a tweet that went out. It was like your 30-day. 10,000 plus man 24/7 PPTQ starts now. Congratulations. Or PTQ or whatever.
You have 73,000 minutes. Begin.
Yeah, it's just like I as soon as like this was announced as like the way that you're going to be qualifying for Mythic Championship, I was immediately disinterested. I was immediately disheartened too, because like,
oh, okay, cool.
If you have like multiple like filler tournaments and like the top, you have 8 of those tournaments, and then the winner of each of those tournaments, that you get put into like a top 8 XYZ, and then you have a, if you do something like that, you're going to get a lot more people interested in it than being like, yeah, just grind for the next 30 days, like. Hopefully you'll get there, and if not, then we don't have to deal with any of the repercussions
whatsoever
of your actions.
So.
But I think that there is definitely an ethical concern on WotC's part to have this be the way that you qualify for $1 million tournament, as your quote unquote casual player, you're non-streamer, you're non-pro. This is how you do it, and that's just not feasible. It's not feasible to tell that to people and expect them to. And expect it just to shake out and like not feel like you need to shoulder any of the blame for the negativity that it causes,
right?
Because I don't think that's healthy.
Yeah, it's really messed up as a company to be like to celebrate the highs of your player base that like does this, right? Like hey, like good job, look at these 8 people, but not recognize that you may have also harmed some people too.
Yeah, like it raises a pretty big ethical red flag, and it's something that I wouldn't blame people for having a pretty bad taste in their mouth about, over like, even if they were people that don't necessarily get too upset about some of the things that WotC does, but you're 100% preying on people that might need like professional assistance or professional help with some of the things that they're dealing with, and you're only encouraging those negative behaviors. And if you are a person that has been affected by someone who is addicted or has an addiction, like, you take that stuff seriously, because it's anything that enables that is not something that you can like tread lightly on. And again, I'm not saying that WotC is 100% at blame. Just like I wouldn't say that any company is 100% at blame for providing a product or a service that can be abused. It's difficult in the world that it's just a shade of gray, but they definitely shoulder some of it. And you definitely have to ask yourself if you want to continue doing business with a company that chooses to be ethically compromised, and where that line is for you. And it's probably different for other people. If you live in America and have a capitalistic society, every company is compromised to some degree. So you just have to like figure out how you shake out on that.
And
but
go eat at Arby's.
Just go eat at Arby's. Just like, everyone dies at the end, man. So like, who cares?
I like how we began the show with a "Don't buy Fiat" and end the show with an "Eat at Arby's."
Yep.
That's our world.
Nihilism. It tastes so good. But yeah, I this is bad. I would encourage people to. I don't want to tell people to not chase their dreams.
Yeah, chase your bliss, man. Like, do what you got to do.
But if this is something that you are chasing,
but do it healthy, man.
Yes,
do it healthy.
Be healthy about that. Now, the big question is, can you? I don't know.
And I don't know either. Again, we could be overstating this a little bit. I don't know. Like, I will say I don't think I could do it, but I also just don't really have the desire to. I don't. I could be cool to play in that tournament, but like I have a professional career, like a life, like and a wife who enjoys spending some amount of time with me, usually. So
right.
Yeah.
I just doubt that there is a healthy way that you can do this.
Back in the day when they had the World of Warcraft episode of South Park,
yeah,
and like the joke about the person on the computer and the gross, like, you know what? That's sort of what this leads to, right? Is like that, like, don't leave, man. Just sit here, snack.
Yeah, you can't leave because if you
don't rest those eyeballs.
If you leave, who knows?
Yeah, you could be taken.
Also, if you continue to play, you might lose. So like, if you lose, then you lose rank, and then you have to play. See, like, I don't like this.
Yeah, that's bad.
It's bad. It's bad. All right, but that's our question of the week. If you have a different opinion or want to share your thoughts, please reach out to us on Twitter. But let's go ahead and wrap this bad boy up. So over the weekend, we are going to have Magic Fest Memphis, which is going to be standard. So lots of standard tournaments happening and people being excited about it, which I think is pretty important. Unfortunately, you're not going to be able to watch this one. And who knows if you're ever going to be able to watch another Magic Fest ever again. That's still something that we don't know any information about as far as I know. And so that's cool. I guess we'll read about it from Channel Fireball after the whole thing's said and done.
Yeah.
But that's going to be nothing happening Star City Games-wise or anything like that.
No, we won't Star City until March 2nd, and then they have regionals after that. So we won't see, I think, SCG for a few weeks.
Yeah.
So there'll be a gap for sure.
A little bit. So tomorrow, next week's episode might be a little bit light, but something will come up, I'm sure.
Yeah, we can always find a way to get angry.
I'm fairly confident about it. Let's be real.
We'll do like a Jerry Springer style show with like a real live arena addict. I was a teenage arena addict.
Yeah, there we go. Perfect.
Not pit fighting.
But that's going to be everything for this week's episode. If you want to reach out to us again, we do have a Twitter. It's YourEndStep, and when you add us, it's at YourEndStep. We also have an email address at YourEndStep@gmail.com. And then finally, we have Facebook, Facebook.com/@YourEndStep. If you're listening to us via your Apple product, be sure to leave us a rating or review in the Apple podcast app. It's just I always forget where you can actually do that.
Yeah, it's in the orchard.
Yeah, just pluck us from that tree and right on the apple. Good apple. We appreciate it.
This is one of the good ones.
This is one of 4 stars apples.
Just like tilt your head back and scream into the sky.
I love this.
5 stars!
It'll get to us eventually. We'll feel it in our bones or something. I don't know.
Well, it goes to the constellations.
Yeah, and then the star energy beams down upon us. And we can arise once more.
We gotta stop. I think we're making a religion right now.
Stop or continue?
I'm going to say stop.
Okay, fair enough.
The capitalist in me says, like, yeah,
continue.
Of course, continue.
Yeah, 100%.
Like, the ethical person's like,
that's the aliens in your bloodstream telling you to do that.
Don't L. Ron Hubbard me.
Anyway, if you are listening to us via Legit MTG, welcome to the show. We appreciate your new listens. They are one of our new hosts, and we appreciate them giving us the space on their lovely website. Be sure to check out some of their other strategy articles they have, as well as browse their single selection. Also, be sure to check out our other lovely sponsor, Comic Town. Again, you can check them out at Comic Town Gaming Center on Facebook. And then last but never least.
It kind of is always least. We do not mention Patreon enough.
It's not least in my heart. In my heart
no,
of hearts.
Course not. No, these are the important people, and yet we do mention them the least.
Which is really. I just have like.
I'm very sorry about
a rhythm, and it's hard for me to change my rhythm sometimes.
If you are a member of our Patreon, we love you
very much.
You keep the lights on.
You 100% do.
If you're not a member of the Patreon, won't you?
Won't you consider? But definitely a huge thank you to all of our Patreon subscribers and supporters. Again, everything that Mike said is...
I'm going to write a whole tagline. We're going to start doing this beginning of the show like we're supposed to.
Yeah, 100%. Put in the show notes and I'll do it.
Yeah, that's fair.
I'm just like Ron Burgundy. Just put in the show notes, I'll read it.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. But yeah, thank you so much for listening this week, and we will catch you next time. You have a great one.
Bye.
Bye.